in the traditional way as young people using and grow into being an addict. So, Peter, if you know him, he's a warm speaker, he's a model speaker. And if you look up in the dictionary, the definition of the word warm, the definition is not so hot. And if you look up the definition of the word model, the definition is small imitation of the real thing. So here is your not so hot, small imitation of the real thing closing speaker for Cocaine Anonymous, Peter O.
Okay, my name's Peter. I'm a drug addict. And it's been a fantastic convention. I'm not showing off here, but I've been to 22 worlds, and this is one of the best. So every effort that was made here and all the work the guys have put in have been unbelievable. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. And I'd like to start off with, I'm one of those type of guys, there's a joke about this old man, and he's sitting on a bench, and he's crying his eyes out. And someone goes over and said, "Why are you crying?" And he said, I've got everything I want. I've got a beautiful wife. I'm 92 years old. She's very delicate with me with sex. She isn't unfaithful to me, but she makes me the most incredible food. And she's just a wonderful partner. And the guy said, "Well, why are you crying?" He said, "I can't remember where I live." And in a way, that's kind of what happened to me. You know, I was born in very poor circumstances. I was born in the middle of the Second World War, and I never, ever thought I would get away from the cold water flat with no bathroom, shared toilet that I shared with my mother and my brother. I never, ever thought I would get away from that. And I had a phone call. I had 8 jobs. I went to 9 different schools. I was all over the place, and I had no confidence. And Jim gave a workshop the other day, and I read this, and it so describes me when I was a young man, up to the age probably of 25, 26. They said, "My deadly fears: fear of intimacy, fear of not being good enough, fear of unfaithfulness, fear of abandonment, fear of change." And that was me as a kid. And I had these men's issues, you know, ego, fear, sex, money. And I had all of those because my father was Jewish and my mother was a Roman Catholic. And it was very difficult to start with. My father was in the war. He was a very brutal kind of man. And the one thing about my mother was she was very frail. She probably weighed 8.5 stone, which is about 120. And she suffered, but boy, she could take a punch because that's what she had to do when my father was around. And so my father come back from the Second World War, and kind of all hell broke loose. And he would move around to different places. He was a crook, he was a bigamist, and a huge bully. And so we moved to 8 different places. And every time I would settle in at a new school and start to feel part of, we move. And so I felt very insecure. I felt very different. You know, you go into the classrooms and one girl's written on my desk, big ears. And I thought, oh shit, you know, I got big ears. So I'm spending my whole life like that. And it was a great challenge for me growing up. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I watched my father beat my mother. I watched my father do all sorts of things. On my 15th birthday, my father was in prison. And but he gave me a present when he got out. And I just felt there's no other family that I know, there's no other family in the schools that I go to that are like this. You know, they don't have to be frightened. My father was also very flash. And although he didn't have any money, he would buy a Buick car. And a Buick car in 1950s, you know, he thought he was bloody Al Capone. And I was ashamed to be seen. I would duck down to this car with my brother because I didn't want anyone to see us because we just felt different. And so this went on for quite a time, and we finally got to a place which was middle class in a place called Stanmore, and we lived there for 2 years. And suddenly, one day, my father's gone. And just before that happened, the worm turned in me. And my father came back. He probably came back from his other family in a filthy, horrible mood. And he came back and he started screaming at my mother. He threw his dinner down the wall. And he went for me, and I went back. And I smashed him over the head with a chair. Also, I pissed myself, which is kind of strange that. I didn't expect that. And he went into the lounge and he stayed there sulking away. But he knew it was the last time he was going to beat me. And 6 weeks later, he was gone. He was gone with his other family. It was a warrant for his arrest. He had screwed up some stuff with some gangsters. The gangsters phoned my mother to tell my mother that my father's got another family. And she said, I don't know, he's gone. And my mother never saw him again. And so we went, and I was homeless. My brother and I were homeless at the age of 15, getting on 16. And we just made do with it. I had to go live with an aunt, which was two hours away from the school I went to. My brother went with another aunt. My mum went with her mum. And 1 year later, we got back together. And I will never, ever forget the feeling of living with my mother after 1 year, of laying on the floor because there was no bed, but looking at the ceiling and think, I'm back with my mother. I'm back with someone that I can trust. And the end result of that really was I couldn't go to school anymore. And I was supposed to be quite brainy. But I failed my exams, and the teachers were going at me, and I never let the teachers know what had happened. If anyone asked me where my father was, I would say he was dead, because I don't share intimate secrets with people. I don't share how I feel with people. I'm frightened of being laughed at. And my father, he had this mad family. They were the Jews, so there were 13 of them. And my mother's a Catholic, and there's 2 of them, so something's gone wildly wrong. And he had this Auntie Leah, and she was about 350 pounds, and she scared the shit out of me. And she said to me one day, you're going to be bald by the time you're 15. And I had this horrible image of me going to school, being the only bald kid in the school. So I've always had a thing about my hair. This is not a transplant, by the way. And she had this husband who weighed about 550 pounds, and he was an animal. He was an MC on television, stuff like that. But he was absolutely, he used to call me "you little tramp." And I always just think, how do they make love? 350 pounds there, 550 pounds on top. He says to his wife, "Can I switch the light off?" And she says, "Why?" He says, "It's burning my ass because it's so far up the well." But I've got a family now, and I've got no one, and I go to work. And I go to work in an insurance firm, and I have no confidence in myself. First job I had was washing up for less than £5. Then I went to an insurance company. I earned £6, and I've had no parental guidance or anything. I don't know what to do. I think I'm still at school. So one day I'm singing an Elvis song. It's, I'm all shook up, and the branch manager, he phones through and says, "Elton, this is an insurance office. This is not the London Palladium Circus." And I said, I thought it was very funny. I said, "You could have fooled me with some of the clowns you got working here. Vroom, next job, please." And I even tried being a policeman. If you were a crook, you'd have been so glad to see me, because I was useless. And what happened one day, you're given these duties, and I go and I did three months training and everything. I'm wearing the Bobby's cap like that. I've never felt so out of place in my life, and I thought, it's not going to work. And they send me at 6 o'clock in the morning to start checking empty houses where people are on holiday. And so I go to this house. It's about 5:45 in the morning, and I see there's a window slightly open. So I pull up the window, have a look inside, and think, that's strange. I hope no one's broken in. And I go in, and I open the fridge, and there's some milk, so I drink the milk. And then I go outside and think, I better report this. And I got out the house, and the window upstairs this woman poked out and said, "Is there anything wrong, officer?" Because I was in the wrong house. And I was told, "This is not for you." And not many people have the honour of getting sacked by the police. But I did, and I just wandered around. And then one day, it was in May '67, I received a phone call because the real loves of my life, the things that sustained me during that period were music. And it was music. It was Elvis, Buddy Holly. It was anyone you like and rock. But it was also Beethoven, Schubert, Brahms, because I studied music. And so that was the one love of my life. And the other was sport. And sport gave me validity. Sport made me, I was a good sportsman, and I was reckless because it was the only way for me to get some form of respect and admiration from other people. So I would dive in there, and I had this great sporting ability that sustained me right the way through. And a fellow footballer phoned me up when I was in about my 6th or 7th job, and I'm sitting there bored out my skull. And this guy says to me, "You enjoyed your work?" So I said, "No." And he said, you want to stay there?" I said, "No." And he said, "Well, there's an opening at a company called Matchbox Toys, which is in East London." And he said, "Why don't you come for an interview?" And that phone call changed my entire life. It changed my direction of where I was going. I met my future wife at that company. I did well at that company. And eventually they sent me to Hong Kong. So it was a total change of life. And I worked well. I was a planner. And in 1972, my company sent me on a junket to Canada and the USA, and I thought, geez, this is unbelievable. I'm a world traveler. I used to stand in the export department of that company and look at the map and think of all the places in the world that I would never go. But they sent me there, and it went well. And then in July '72, he took me for a drink, my boss, and he said, "Did you like Canada? Did you like America?" And I said, "Yeah, I loved it. It was fantastic." And he said, "Well, we'd like you to go to Hong Kong." And I thought, shit, damn, I'm going to Hong Kong now. And I said, "Yes, yes." And he said, "We'd like you to go at the end of the month," which was about 14 days. And I said, "Brilliant." And he said, "Well, hold it, Pete. You're not coming back." And I said, "What?" He said, "We want you to go there for 3 years." And I trembled. And I know that within 5 seconds inside my stomach, I had to take it. I had nothing. I washed the kids in the sink. I still lived in a place with no bathroom and no hot water. And so I said yes. And I wasn't married at the time. And I was living with a lady who had 2 children from a previous marriage. And I loved the 3 of them, but so badly. And I loved my wife so much that when I wasn't with her, sometimes I would tremble. I would just have to be with her. And it's a love that I'd never, ever felt before. And of course, cocaine came along and took all that away. She didn't want to go to Hong Kong. I did. And I said, "We have to. We cannot turn this down." So I went without her, and she followed on. And in one day, 14 days after that, I became a husband for the first time. I became a father for the first time. I became an expatriate for the first time. And I managed to get a second job, also playing professional football. So everything had changed. And I'm really nervous. But I found that I can handle it. I found that I can deal with it. And I'm dealing with some of the richest Chinese people in the world. There's a guy called Li Ka-shing, and he was a billionaire. He's a billionaire now. He owns half of Vancouver. And I remember the first time I had to deal with him over a price increase. And he said he had to put the price up. I've got a big American boss looking at me, as much to say, "How are you going to handle this, kid?" And the American says to the Chinese guy, "Deal with Peter. He's our man here." So I look and I don't know what the hell to say. He said, so I said, "We can't accept the price increase, Mr. Lee." He said, What do you think, Mr. Olsen, that I can make product for nothing, I can make product for your company, and yet I have to lose money. Do you think that's right?" And I said, "No, I don't think it's right, but your works manager told my boss 6 months ago that he would hold the price for a year, and you're not doing that." And he said, "Well, I can't make stuff for nothing." And I don't know why I said it. I said, Mr. Lee, I'm new out here. A lot of people think I'm too young for this job. A lot of people think I'm too inexperienced for this job and that I shouldn't be here. I should be replaced. And he said, yeah. And I said, you're going to affect my career. You're going to get me into big trouble if you don't do this. And believe it, he said yes. And I couldn't believe that. So I carried on. I learned in my business. I'm negotiating. I'm making toys. And I'm playing cricket for Hong Kong. I'm playing professional football. I've got 2 wages coming in, and life is good. I've got a place with 2 bathrooms. The kids couldn't believe that they had their own baths and stuff like that. And then one day I'm going to play cricket for Hong Kong in the World Cup in the UK. And this is on June the 11th, 1982. So I've been out there for about 10 years now. I've become a divisional director. I've reached heights that I never believed that I would reach. And so I get the plane to England, and I get off at Gatwick, and I pick up a newspaper, and the company I'm working for, Matchbox, has gone broke. I find out on the day I arrive for my holiday, and you think, God, fly back, no wages, American Express bill, $15,000 down to me, no housing allowance, all that for about 18 years for working for a company. But I got another job, okay, and then one day I couldn't take it anymore. So I decided to open my own business. And it took me a long time to get going. My first customer was Vidal Sassoon, believe it or not, and making brushes and combs, and he'd go, you don't look good, we don't look good. And I said, oh, so I'll make them for you, darling. So I made them, and then one day a guy comes up about a year later, and he said, I got the license to a boy band. And I think, yeah, I've made ABBA dolls, disaster. 300,000 M at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. I've made Michael Jackson. That was total bloody disaster. And I think, what are you going to do? So I said, okay, I'll make them. And he gave me a sculptor, a Robbie Williams and all those people. And he said, see what you can get some molds. I got some molds for the body, the arms and legs. And I thought I'll put £1 per head, £1 per piece onto it. And this was my first real deal as an independent businessman. So he accepted that, and I thought, this is going to be bullshit, this. And he sold 290,000 in 15 months. And I made £290,000. And I just couldn't believe it. And then he came back, and I started to make product. Anyone heard of Polly Pockets, which was a big thing in the UK? I made Polly Pockets. I made Paddington Bear. I made Thomas the Tank, and I'm starting to really grow. So my first year's turnover is about 90,000 US, and I grow to, and I'm not saying this to impress you, this is what it is. It grew to 90 million US a year, and I am the sole shareholder of this company. And so I'm making so much money, and I expect everything. I've gone up in the world, and how it affected me, my ego became bigger, my mouth became bigger, my desire to impress everybody became bigger. And you think, I've got all this money now, and I'm like the guy who's sitting on the bench, he's forgot the way home. I've forgotten everything. There's a strain on my marriage. I started to travel all over the world regularly, and my wife didn't like that. I'm missing my children growing up. And it's just shit. And I can't understand, money doesn't buy you happiness. It didn't buy me happiness. It brought me discomfort. It brought me the feeling of uselessness and self-pity. And how can that be when you've got all this money? Well, I can assure you it is. I felt my wife didn't love me. I felt, you're now dealing with people. I asked the guy once, said, how do you do business? He said, do you like your clients? And I said, yes, of course I like my clients. And he said, bullshit, fuck them. So I said, what? He said, fuck them before they fuck you. And I thought, this is a nice philosophy for business. So any kindness I've got, any honesty I've got, I'm going to screw them before they screw me. And it became a battle. And you get contracts from people. They don't want to pay you. They phone you at 4 a.m. to wake you up, needle you. It became a battleground. And then one day, this Indian guy, he said to me, "Peter, have you tried any cocaine?" And I went, "Yes." And I hadn't. I never touched a drug. I was 52 years old. I had never touched a drug in my life. So he took me up the Hong Kong Cricket Club, and he lay a line of cocaine on the dashboard of a Mercedes Benz. No crap, no Ford, no shitty cars like that, no Oldsmobile, a Mercedes Benz. And he rolled me up $100 bill, and I went like that. And instead of snorting it, I blew it. And it went all over the car. And he said, "What is the matter with you, you bloody fool?" I said, "Accident, accident. Sorry. Give me another shot." So he laid it down again, and I went like that. And I thought I was Austin Reed, Austin Powers, actually, I thought I was. And it came to me, I'm young, I'm well hung, I'm strong, never wrong, I've got a big dong. And I don't know about you guys here, but when you've done cocaine, you look down and it's gone. So I think, okay, I'll have one line and give me a bag. So he gives me a bag, and it lasts me for about 2 weeks. Then I say, "Give me another bag." Starting to progress. Then give me a bag for every day of the week. And within no time, within 3 years, I'm doing 5 grams a day, smoking anything I could get hold of, any drug that you want. And I used to travel to Singapore, and Singapore is no tolerance with drugs. And I've been in Singapore before I started using them. I'm having breakfast at the Shangri-La Hotel, which is a real posh place. I'm having my breakfast, I'm cracking my egg, and the guy on the television says, "So-and-so was executed this morning for drug trafficking." You could get executed for 15 grams or more is supposed to be trafficking. So I'm now going in Singapore. If I'm there for 5 days, I'm going in with 25 grams. The thought of not having the cocaine was unimaginable. And I'm going to Thailand. Same thing, they'll take you out, take you to Indonesia. You end up in a place called Bali. You're found with drugs, they take you to an island and shoot you. And in those days, it was a mandatory death sentence in Singapore. And there was a young Chinese girl from Hong Kong, and she had an 18-month-old baby, and she was about 21 years old. And she got caught taking the drugs. You don't get hit with coming in with the drugs, you get hit both coming out with the drugs as well. And that's just as serious a crime. And so she's caught, she's got this baby, and she's going to hang on the 21st of December. And the British government said, because it had a say in Hong Kong then, "How can you do that? How can you execute a girl that was so stupid? All she was getting was 500 US out of this. How can you do that?" And so Singapore showed mercy. And they hung her on the 2nd of July, 2nd of January. They let her spend Christmas. And there's an instance of another girl who was going to get married, and she wore a wedding dress when she was hung. She was caught, and they allowed her to use her wedding. It was just the most horrendous situation. And these things were just mandatory. It's not like the UK, and it's not like Europe. There are harsh penalties. I think in February was the last hanging in Singapore, where the guy had 30 grams of marijuana, because marijuana is 30 grams, hard drugs like cocaine and heroin is 15 grams. So they're still hanging them, and the Singapore hangman has got, he's hung over 1,000 people. And it's starting to get easier and less now, but it's still death sentence if you go out there. There's a English grandma in jail in Bali waiting execution. She's been there a long time. Whether they'll let her off or not, nobody knows. But she's a grandma. She's going to hang, or she'll get shot. So whatever happens there, I'm still using. I'm going to the USA, and I'm on a Virgin aeroplane, and I'm in the toilet, and I'm upstairs, and I've got the cocaine lined out, and the captain comes on, smart ass. He says, "We're entering US space. If there's anyone with dairy product, fruit, meat product, please give us a flight attendant. and we will have it destroyed. And then he said he thought he was really funny. He said, if there's anyone who does anything naughty, put it down the toilet. And I thought, fuck, there's a camera in here. I got a tray there where they change the baby thing. It's loaded with cocaine. I got the nose that is loaded with cocaine. And I look at the cocaine and said, what? The cocaine says, I'm not going down no fucking toilet. And I said, no, you're not. And I stick it up my bum. That's crack, isn't it, really? So I stick this up my bum and I go through customs in New York and I get away with it. And now they've got dogs and everything. And you think of the consequence. I could have gone to the penitentiary. And, you know, there was a guy who described when you take drugs, just before your brain is that big. And when you finish taking drugs, your brain is that big. And he said also, when you go into a penitentiary in America, your arsehole is that big. And when it comes out, it is that big. This went on for 6 years. I was stoned at my daughter's wedding, stoned out of my mind, and I thought I got away with it. My business is going to shit. My wife's wondering what the hell is going on. Nobody really knows what's happening with me. And then one day, on the 19th of January 2001, my wife, because when my daughter got married, she got married in August 2002. Little did I know that within 7 months, I would have lost my family. I would have lost the woman that I love so desperately, gone permanently, finito. And so I'm on my own. And I still can't stop. And then one day my daughter comes round to my house, because I got a house now, not a cold water flat. I got a house, you know. I got 6 bedrooms, baby, you know, and I'm alone. I'm totally alone. Got a swimming pool, 3 cars, 4 bathrooms, and no one is living in the house, only me. And I remember I woke up and I heard kind of a voice, and a voice said, "Is that you, Peter?" And I looked up and it said, I've been waiting for you. I've been waiting for you, Peter. You've got 2 choices. Either do something about this and ask for help, or die. And it's that moment I knew I got to ask for help here. I cannot do this. I know nothing about you guys. I know nothing about Alcoholics Anonymous. I have nothing about what you have to do to actually become sober and recover. I don't know that. And so I said to I went out for lunch with a few people, and my son was there. And I said to my son, I can't go on like this. This was in Kowloon in Hong Kong. I said, I can't go on like this. And he said, what do you want me to do, Dad? And I said, do you think you could get hold of someone? I don't want to go to the Priory. I don't want to go to Betty Ford. And I had this vision of toffs, you know, drinking Evian water out of wine glasses and stuff there. I don't want any of that shit. Just see what you can do. This miracle happened. He phoned the Cocaine Anonymous hotline in the UK, which is only there because the USA started off our worldwide fellowship. And he got hold of a guy there who got hold of another guy. And I got a phone call 2 days later. I got this phone call, and I'm in my office and I'm stoned out of my mind. And this guy, I picked the thing up and go, what? Yeah, what? And he said, is that Peter? So I said, yeah. And he said, how are you, Peter? And I knew it was something special. And I said, he said, my name's Steve. And I said, Steve, I'm fucked up beyond my imagination. And he said, I know a solution. I've been there. I want to help you. And I think, why? He's phoned me from the UK, very expensive in those days, didn't reverse the charges or anything. And he just talks to me about, and he said, I want you to come to England. I want you to go to rehab. And I want to help you. And I argue with the time I'm going to go to rehab. And in the end, I say, okay, I'm going to go to rehab. I jump on a plane, I go to rehab, I got 5 grams left in my pocket. I thought no one's going to notice. So I stop at a lay-by on the way to Bournemouth in southern England, and I have the 5 lines. And I'm totally fucked, and I end up at this rehab, and it's a down and dirty rehab. I find out that I'm the only private client there. Every other client has come from jails, probation, from the NHS, just me. And I look, I park the car, and I fall out of the car because I'm stoned. And I look and I see these people, and I go, Jesus Christ. Yeah, there's one guy's in a tutu. He's got a 9 o'clock shadow. He's in a tutu. His name's Lily. And there's all these other guys staring at me. And 5 days later, they said, hey, Pete, you know when you fell out that car? I said, yeah. They said, we all went, Jesus Christ, look at that. And I did my first day on the 1st of October, 2001. And I've never used since. And there's a story some American told. There's a story, there's a big hole in the ground. It's 15 feet deep, and there's an addict at the bottom of the hole. And the addict's screaming out, help me, please, somebody help me. And a priest goes by, not Father John, not you, John, an Anglican priest. And he looks at it, he said, what is the problem with you, my son? He said, I'm in this hole, Father, I can't get out the hole. And he said, well, there's no point in me jumping the hole with you because we'll both be stuck then, but I will say a prayer to you tonight. And then a shrink goes by, the shrink looks down and he says, help me, please help me get out the hole. And he says, I can't get in the hole with you. Here's my card. Come and see me. I'll give you some pills. I went to a shrink, gave me pills. I loved it. Red pills, blue pills, green pills, pills that look like M&M. I loved it. Now I've got a problem. I've gone to a shrink and he's made me a double addict of prescription drugs and non-prescription drugs. And so he goes away and then an addict walks by and the guy shouts out, help. And the addict jumps straight in the hole. And he says, why did you do that? Now we're both stuck. He said, no. I've been in this hole. I found the way out. Let me show you. And that's what Cocaine Anonymous is, and that's what our fellowship is for people like us. It's something so incredible. So I went, I never knew what was on offer. I struggled. I had tears because I was a guy that never cried before. The people, whether they were from prisons or whether they were from probation service, looked after me because there's something wonderful about us. We've all been to hell and we identify. And if you haven't been to hell, you're unlikely to find out what heaven can be. And so I graduated from this place and had it just got to be fun in the end, And they give me a graduation ceremony because I missed graduation when I was not allowed to go back to school. I'm sitting there and they were saying, I said, Peter, you're so wonderful. And yes. Don't stop. And I go home. I go back to Hong Kong, and in 3 days, I'm in the depths of hell. I meet people that have dined on my credit card, dined at my home, eaten my food. And I say, hi, John. And they go, they don't want to know. I meet someone down by a ferry, getting on the ferry. And I say, hi, Bobby, how are you? I'm busy. And I say, I'm not asking you to talk to me. I'm just saying, how are you? And everything is black. So I go, I think I've got to go to something. There's no Cocaine Anonymous here. So on the 1st of January 2002, I went to AA. And if Steve was the first angel in my life who got me to look at recovery, I bump into a guy who's the most grumpy, obnoxious bastard you could ever meet. And I take one look at this place and see all these people there on New Year's Day, and I say bullshit to this. And I walk away, and this guy shouts, hey, Peter. No, he didn't call me Peter. He didn't know my bloody name. He said, hey, "You looking for a meeting?" So I said, "Yes." He said, "Come and have a cup of coffee with me." And today, 23 years later, that guy's one of my closest friends. He knows Father John. He's a complete moaner. No one could like him unless he was an addict. And he's been a friend. And I think then I'm going to get this. And I start to feel a bit better. And so I think, I know what, I'm going to find out where there's a convention, a World Convention for Cocaine Anonymous, and I'm going to go there. And I don't care where it is, I'm going there. And I look up, and Steve tells me there's a World Convention in, what was it? It was Portland, Oregon. So I go there, and I've not got much than 8-9 months. And I go there and I arrive at the airport, and I'm so fragile as a person. I am so frightened as a person. It takes me half an hour to pluck up the courage to take a taxi from the airport to the Hilton Hotel. And I'm just terrified. I don't know anybody there. And I'm walking through, and I get one of these. And I'm walking through the Hilton lobby, and there's two of the brothers down at the other end. And I thought, oh, shit. So I walk down, and I'm going for a walk. And I walk up, and the two brothers, one of them looks at me and says, "You from Hong Kong?" So I said, "Yeah." He said, "You got crack cocaine in Hong Kong?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "You got anything else in Hong Kong?" I said, "Yeah." And he went, "Motherfucker. Hey, Charlie, come and see this motherfucker from Hong Kong." And he became a great friend of mine. He's died now. His name was Khartoum. He was the most wonderful person. He took me into Watts, got me to speak at the Martin Luther King Center in Watts in the States, and we just became these great friends. And I just found that doing things, somebody said to me, "I'll give you your money back. I'll give you your family back. I'll give you your business back because you know what cocaine can do to you. You've learned your lesson." It's like Nancy Reagan saying, "Just say no. Just say no. If I just say no, I fucking just say no." I'm powerless. So I think, okay, and I'm at this convention, and I'm loving every minute of it. And I think there's maybe a couple of guys here that were there, because when they saw me, my application, they thought that it was going to be a Chinese guy. So I was told, everyone goes, "Where's the Chinaman? Where's the Chinaman?" "I'm a Chinaman." "Wow, you don't look like a Chinaman." And I go there, and then this woman comes up to me, and she says, "Peter." I said, "Yeah." She said, "Peter, here's some paper, 20 pounds of paper." And I got one suitcase to go back to Hong Kong with. And I said, "What's that?" She said, "Starter kit, start a meeting in Hong Kong." And I thought, whoa, she's serious? And she won't let me go. So I put the bags in, go back to Hong Kong. And on the 22nd of September, 2002, the Far East, Hong Kong, China, and everywhere else had their first cocaine anonymous. We had 5 to start with. They're still working. We had 5 people to start with. NA came up to me and said, "Could you stop this? Could you join forces with us? Because you're taking our people away." I said, "You silly sod, piss off." Fucking smack burgers. And I say, "No." And pretty soon it becomes one person, me. And I sit there week after week with a big book in my hand. And then a Yank, an American from Ohio, joins. And there's the 2 of us. And he says to me, "Would you like to share?" And I say, "Well, who the fuck else is going to share? There's no one here." And we stuck at it, and we would not let it die. And within a year, we had 5 members. Then a rehab opened in Hong Kong, and they started to come in, and we started to get 15 members. We started to have 3 meetings a week. Jackie, our trustee at that time, comes and says, "Become an area." And I said, how can we become an area? We should be a loner meeting. It's just us out in Hong Kong, make it alone. And she said the most wonderful words to me. She said, do you know what CA Hong Kong gives this fellowship? And I said, no. And she said, it gives it worldwide dimension. So do something and come. So I went to conference and we got accepted and recognized as an area, and everyone clapped me, and I love that. And then we got a guy come, he moves to Indonesia. He opens CA Indonesia in Jakarta. And another guy comes and he goes to northern Thailand, Chiang Mai, and he opens CA there. So thus we grow. There's something so incredible about that. And so going back to the thing, if the guy said to me I could have everything back that I'd lost, we know it wouldn't work. We know that this is a spiritual program with spiritual principles. And I had forgotten and lost all these spiritual principles in my life. And what I needed and what I realized was I needed self-respect. I needed to regain my self-respect. And my mind said, yes, but you've got to earn that. And I needed integrity. And my mind said, yeah, well, earn integrity. I want the love of other people. I want to feel good. Well, do things for other people, show love to other people. And this mysterious thing started to happen. I'm doing my prayers every day. I'm trying to do the right thing. And some of the things we do are so small and so wonderful. There was a woman, American woman, she came to our rooms in AA in Hong Kong, and she gave a share. She was 1 year to the very day she gave a share. And I went up and hugged her afterwards and said, thank you. And she said, you don't remember, do you, Peter? I said, what? She said, 1 year ago when I was crying and dying here, you came up to me and you hugged me. And I thought, God, did I do that? I didn't even remember it. And there's a guy on a plane, and I'm flying club class. No economy for me. And I'm standing by the club class toilet. Now this bloke comes from economy. It's fucking cheek. She's like, you're in economy. Don't touch our toilets. And he looks at me and he says, oh, sorry, would you mind? So I said, okay. So he goes in the toilet. He's there for 10 minutes. I've nearly messed myself waiting for him. And then he comes out and he can't get out of the toilet. So I reach into the toilet and I carry him out the toilet. And I said, do you want me to take you to your seat? And he said, yes. He said, I've got Parkinson's. And I thought, oh my God. And he said, thank you. And I said, thank you. Thank you for allowing me to do something. Father John and I and another associate, we went to Cambodia. And we went to Cambodia, and the thing is with the tourists, people like us, we're always going to get ripped off. Doesn't matter, a bloody guy selling eggs in the market, a woman selling T-shirts, they're always going to rip us off. And so we see this woman, she's got a little baby, and she's in a market. And we see her, and she says, I say, how much are the T-shirts? She says, 15. And I go, never. 7. And she goes, 10. No, 7. And in the end, we buy T-shirts off for 10. We pay $8 each. And we go out of the market and we suddenly stop. And we think, what the hell are we doing? There's this woman. I'm staying in a $200 night hotel and I'm cheating a woman out of a few, whatever the local currency is. So all we did was go back and give her the extra money. She probably thought, bloody idiots, but I don't care. We preserved and we maintained our humanity. 5 minutes. Thank you, dear boy. I don't like being told to shut up. But what has happened to me as a person is I have had a spiritual awakening. I have had a new design for living. It says page 28, we come into these rooms grasping any hand, just dying to get any hand that's going to help us find a new design for living, a new way of living. And that's what happened to me. And I have sponsors. I have Father John is an incredible, Father John sponsors me sometimes without talking. I go over to him and say, this, and this, Father John, and this, and this. You know what he does? He goes, oh, okay, yeah, I understand. But my life has been enriched by Cocaine Anonymous. My life has been enriched by the fact that I'm a drug addict. We do step 4s, we do step 5s. We make amends. I don't know many normies that do that. I think we are the most incredible, brave people in the world and honest people in the world. When we can do our step 4, go through all that shit. And when I did my first step 4, it was agonizing. And when I did my step 5, it was liberating. And you get to that stage where you say, why me? Am I the only one? And then you meet somebody and you say, what, you too? You felt like that too? You did that too? I'm not the only one here. That's the way to make a friend. That's the way to make fellowship. That's the way to live a life beyond your wildest dreams. And I'm very proud to be here today and to talk to you. And my 5 minutes is up.